Hi everybody, it's Robbie from Southern California, and I think I did one of the most stupidest things. Nah, I've done stupider. I just planted this, and in a perfect world, I believe it would be great. And I have no idea if this is going to look this good in a few days. I don't even know if it's going to be here in a few days. I'll show you what I did because this will work for you, and it's worked for me in the past. And it's so easy to do. This is a dishpan. This is how I grow a lot of my food plants. They grow fantastic. And yes, even zucchini. I have gotten big zucchini in here. Let's go through this. And as we get to the end, or pretty much later on, Zoe's sitting here with me, I will tell you why I probably shouldn't have done this. But you know what? I might be coming back to you next week and saying, surprise! I beat Mother Nature. Let's get into what I'm doing here and how we can all grow all kinds of plants in these dish pans that cost less than $3. I'm going to be working on my deck, and I'll let you see what I'm going to do, because everybody that's taking gardening classes or studying it will say it doesn't work. But I'm going to show you it does work. But here's my problem. If it doesn't work, it may not be my fault. And the reason is, look at the mess. I'm getting all kinds of stuff going now. Is we are going to have really bad weather this week. When I say bad weather, for us here in Southern California, to drop down into the mid 40s is really cold, cool or cold for spring. But I'm going to try it anyways due to where I am going to set it up. There is glass, so there's a little bit protection, and I can create a microclimate, even if it's a temporary one, and there's even more to it. It will be a bigger microclimate than what you'll see when I'm finished. So as you can see, I have been very busy trying to get stuff done. I brought up leaves from the garden to compost. I've got to get my tomato plants taken care of soon. I've already transplanted some of my cosmos, and let me tell you something, the ones that I did are double the size. I can show you that later on. So I've got to get that one out of the pot and into a new pot. See what it's in? We got to transplant that because the other ones, the same time purchased, are twice the size, like I said. Let's get this done. I'm going to let you watch me, and I'll explain exactly what is going on. Now, as far as the stand, I'm going to set up a dish pan. Gary made that stand, and I know a lot of you wanted to know how it was made, but here is the issue with that. It's PVC, and though he used scraps, he still had to buy a couple of these joints, and when he calculated it out to build that stand, now, and going to the store and buying all the parts and the PVC pipe would cost you about $60, which I'm going to tell you right now is absolutely ridiculous. I would not tell anybody to do that. You could buy a chair like that for cheaper. You can get a TV table for $10 at any store. They sell them. This is just a wooden TV table, but you can also go to thrift stores and buy them. So I'm not going to endorse the stand. When it comes to spending money, I'm all for people buying things, but when it comes to throwing money away, that is throwing money away. Unless you guys have all the parts, and most of the time you won't, because there's so many joints. And these have gone up in the past few years to the point where it'd be ridiculous to do that. But I'm going to set this up this way, and keep in mind, you'll be able to do it on anything, even a chair. But since I've got it, and he made it out of love, I'm going to go ahead and use that today. So let's get this thing set up. So here we go. The first thing I'm going to do is I grabbed a metal chair. Just so happens to sit on the deck is metal, and I love it. It works great because I'm going to put my power unit there, turn on the electricity, and plug in my soldering iron, which gets hot, so I don't have to go look for a plate or anything. All I have to do is keep an eye on Zoe and make sure she doesn't get near it. So supervise that when you're using a hot soldering iron. Now, while that's heating up, I decided to use a tote lid on the bottom because I am going to direct the water out of the dish pan to 2 more pots if all goes well. And if it doesn't work, I'll try something else. So I'm putting 2 of those wire basket holders I made there, and I'm going to add in 2 trash cans for color. Isn't that cool? I got that at Dollar Tree as well. And you know how I made those stands. I've got the whole video. You can go check that out. Now I'm just kind of getting my stuff together as I'm waiting for the soldering iron to heat up. Now, I covered this container, this pot, because this is kitchen scraps. I mean, it is full. It's got everything in there. Eggshells, bananas, greens, old cheese, anything I found in the fridge went in that pot. And I sat it outside and I didn't want any critters getting in there. So I used one of the wire baskets to keep it covered so nothing would get in there. Now here what I'm going to do is in the tote lid, I'm going to make a few holes on each side. Now this particular side, if all goes well, it will come out of the dishpan and it will fill the lid up from the tote lid. This is from an 18-gallon tote lid. And it will drain, instead of just draining to the ground, it will each side, because I'm doing it on both sides, will drain into one of those pots there. And that's what I'm hoping. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. I mean, I could do it with tubes and irrigation tubing, and I've done it, but I'm kind of doing this quick. This is my first zucchini I'm planning on growing for this season, and it's probably not the right time to do this. So we're going to get more into this. Now I'm making the holes in the dishpan, and I'm doing it a good inch to inch and a half up. Now, being here in Southern California, we get hot and dry. So I want to make sure that my containers have a little bit of water all the time on the bottom. Otherwise, my plants will dry out. It works perfect for me, and it's very similar like having a wicking bed, but instead, my containers hold a little extra water for the plants, which works out perfect with our warm weather. Of course, if you're in a very damp and wet area, then you would go ahead and put your holes on the bottom or as low as possible. And if your weather changes quite often, just don't water it as much if you've got your holes higher. So I'm putting on gloves now because I'm going to put in all kinds of stuff in there. You saw already the compost, and I'm going to bring you closer so you can see what I'm doing. Because it's a little far, but I wanted you to see how I was setting it up to give you ideas in case you've got a table or something and you want to direct the water coming out of your container to go into another container. Why? Because as that compost breaks down, all the kitchen scraps and everything I put in there, that is fertilizer coming out of there that the plant didn't use, and hopefully going into another container. Now I put some stuff I collected off the ground, there were wood chips, leaves or whatever on the bottom. So this way the water will flow good. If you put potting soil on the bottom, it can cake up and block your holes. Sometimes I use shredded paper, but here I'm using whatever I just kind of picked up on the ground out in the gardens. And now I'm spreading all this. This is really too much, but I have done this before. And the reason I put so much in there, and I'm adding some collard leaves, and there's everything rotting away in there, is because zucchini are very heavy feeders. Those plants are just ferocious when it comes to feeding. And when all that breaks down, it's going to feed that plant, hopefully long enough for the next few months to give me quite a few zucchini. Now I'm kind of covering it again with whatever I found on the ground. Look at that, a toilet paper roll, because some of it came out of other totes. Now, this is not potting mix. This is soil that came out of totes on the ground, and I sifted it. So let's call it compost that's been sifted from the ground, leaves breaking up and wood chips, whatever. And I'm putting that in there because I'm telling you my zucchini is going to feed off of everything breaking down that you just saw me load up in there. Now, here's the thing. If you were doing it, you could prep your containers now and you can plant in a few weeks. In the meantime, the microbes and the earthworms, whatever's in there, will break everything down for you. If you don't have earthworms, don't worry about it. Microbes do the same thing. I know it and other people know it. They've been doing it. Maria, she's been a sub and a member to my channel for years, and she told me she couldn't find earthworms, but the microbes were doing the same exact thing. And that's what I told her. And she grows a beautiful garden. Now, what I'm doing in that other container is that is a tote that I was taking all my kitchen scraps and dumping them in there and leaving it open during the day so the little fruit flies that get in there, the multiply, were feeding the birds. But in the meantime, I got a lot of earthworms in there. Tiny baby earthworms. You see them moving around? It's loaded, and it'd be good for the earthworms to move them around. I collected some soil from around the gardens, and if there's any earthworm eggs in there, and a lot of times there are, especially under flower pots or rocks, they're going to hatch when they have the right conditions, and breaking down food is the right condition. So now I'm kind of throwing a few in there, and in the meantime, it's going to be loaded with microbes, breaking everything down. This is so simple. Now, another thing, putting so much in there this time of the year when we're still 45 degrees at night, As it starts to break down, it's going to create a little bit of heat in there. That's what breaking down matter does. I'm not making hot compost. I don't do that for my gardening because I want my soil to be alive. But doing it this way, it just creates a small amount of heat, which is going to be so beneficial for the plants right now. We're only talking about 5 degrees. It could get a little warmer than that. Hot composting is different. That's when you're making a great big mountain. It's not on a level surface like this, and when you mound it, it creates more heat. We're not doing hot composting. We're just doing it in a level area in a container flat where it's spread out, and the earthworms and the microbes just go in there and start to eat it away, and it becomes part of our soil, as we call compost. And I will say quickly here again, you don't need to add as much as I did. So now I'm going to water it really well because I'm going to plant in there. Now, like I said, if you were doing this on your deck patio or in the garden, you could set these up right now and go back in a month or two and plant later. You don't have to do this now. It probably would have been better if I waited, since we're going to have horrible weather coming. When I say horrible weather, not just in the 40s at night, thunder, rain, wind. They're calling for major windstorms, and they're calling for landslides and all kinds of stuff. And I don't know. It's supposed to be a real bad thing coming in. So anyways, what I decided to do here is put irrigation tubing. This is 1/2-inch irrigation tubing. You know how I love my tubing in each corner. Should I have done it before I started? Of course I should have. But the thing is, I thought about it while I was doing this, and I thought, what if I do want to protect my zucchini? What if I want to wrap it if it gets really cold with a shower curtain, or maybe some fabric, and maybe it's going to get windy and I want to tie it in, or maybe I just want to plant something else and have it trellising. Well, this is the time to do it before the plant is growing anyways. So I went ahead and I had 2 from another project that was left over and 2 I just cut, and it's going to go in each corner. Now, why would I do that? That's because I want to put tomato stakes there. But here's the problem. What happens when you stick a stake in the ground or in your bucket or in your tote? You know how it wiggles? I mean, it's just soil or it's just compost. It wiggles and it doesn't really hold much. Correct? Let me tell you, it doesn't. It wiggles loose, and if there's nothing really solid in there, not for a simple stake. But if you put irrigation tubing on your containers, you can do this on a bucket, you can do it on the dishpan as I'm doing here, or the totes. You can put them anywhere you want. You don't have to put it in the 4 corners. You can put it on the sides too. But here I'm going to put one in each corner. And then when I'm done putting it in there, and I'm kind of pushing the soil and the compost away so I don't fill up my irrigation tubing so the stake will go in. But if a little gets in there, don't worry about it. It's no big deal. It's going to still work perfect. But I'm just kind of moving everything over with a spoon. And I use spoons. You can get them at the dollar stores. You can get them from Walmart, like a 4-pack for like $1. These silverware spoons, forks, and knives are one of my favorite garden tools to use. They're so cheap. They come out to like $1 a piece. All you have to do is just, keep them in the garden and try to designate a spot where you put them. This way you won't lose them like I do. And then you'll always be running to that one spot, using your tool, and then putting it back. Now I'm just kind of pressing them in, and this is going to work fantastic. If you haven't done this, it's really worth a try. Now I'm making 2 holes in each corner. And there'll be about a 1/2 inch to 1 inch apart. It doesn't matter how close they are or how far apart they are. Because what I'm going to do after I make the holes with my hot soldering iron is I'm going to put a zip tie in. Now let me tell you something about the power unit. You can use a power unit like me, or you can plug it in the house and then run outside, because it stays hot for about 5 minutes or so. And you can still make the holes in your containers, but you have to move quick to do it. And the more holes you make, the faster it cools down too. But with my power unit, I use that in case there's a power outage. I can turn on lights, I can plug something in, I can charge my phone, my laptop, my tablet, and you just keep on going. I love the power unit. It's been the best thing I ever bought. I bought 3 of them. Now I am going to put the zip ties in. I'll use a different color. Normally I would use black because it would look nice and neat, but I want you to see how I'm doing it. I know we're a little far away, but I think you've got the idea that I am gently pushing in the zip tie into one side of the hole. Then I'm bringing it through the other hole back in, and then I'm pulling the zip tie. Can you kind of see what I'm doing? And you could do it on the outside if you don't want to do it on the inside. It doesn't matter which way you do it. As long as you put your zip tie through and then you come back around. See, it's kind of like you're sewing a stitch. And then you're going to bring it back through the other hole, and then you're just going to pull your zip tie. Again, it could be on the outside or the inside. It doesn't matter. But when you put your stakes in there, and you can use bamboo or any stick you found, maybe branches off a tree, as long as it fits in the 1/2-inch irrigation tubing or poly tubing, whatever you want to call it. I'm telling you, it's not going anywhere. They really hold good. Now, you can also put 2 zip ties in if you want, but I generally now just use 1. If it should break, I just put another zip tie in. And normally they don't. They've been working really good. But 1 on each corner, and then you can use as many stakes as you want. You could just leave it right now, and you don't have to do anything. And they're there if you need it. Something starts growing. You've got a tomato growing in there. Anything that's going to be bushy, even beans, you can put the stakes in afterwards once this is here, and then you can go ahead and direct it in a trellis fashion, vertical gardening. And I can't live without my irrigation tubing. I use it for everything now around the garden since I came up with it. I didn't see anybody using it anywhere, but I started analyzing quite a few years ago, and I thought this is going to be just great and perfect for the garden, and so cheap. So you saw me put in the stakes. These here are 3-foot stakes. I got them at the 99-cent store, and there are 2 packs for $1.29. That was a really good price. They do have 4-footers. I didn't need that tall, but those are $1.49. Now, this is the zucchini plant I picked up at the 99-cent store as well. Those were $1.49, but there were 3 plants for that price. Compared to Home Depot and Lowe's that were about $5 for 1 plant, this worked out really, really good. They are a bit leggy, and there it is, green zucchini. But I figured I'm going to go ahead and try. We still are a little early being so cool at night. I did try to grow some seeds outside, and they didn't grow, which usually gives me a sign that we're a little too early for zucchini until the nights are at least about 55 to 60 degrees. But I'm going to go ahead and try it because as that compost is breaking down in there, it's going to create that gentle heat, and that may keep this plant alive, and hopefully it will just suddenly burst into life. But we'll see. We've got bad weather coming too. I may start over. Right now I am making a hole, and what I'm doing is putting in potting mix just in the hole to get the plant going really good. This way, as it starts to set root, it's going to set root in the potting mix that I put in there, and then it will let its roots go into all that matter I put in there and the broken down compost I already had and everything. But this will give the plant a start, and this plant does need help. This is too big. It should be more shorter and stockier, but this is what they had, and I figured it was worth a try, and we'll see. You'll see together with me if it's going to make it. And what I'm doing is creating that well around it, so when I water, I know that the water is going directly to the roots and not drifting away in a river fashion away from the plant. We want to make sure those little roots in there are getting all the water they need. I'm also going to add in here another flower pot. Now, in that flower pot is simply some wood chips and leaves and stuff from the garden where I can water the flower pot, and that will keep dampness around the roots as well. So you don't have to overwater if it's raining, of course, and wet, but it does create dampness there, and that's what's really good. And then I've got a basket. I'm going to cover it and kind of support the plant up a little bit. And hopefully in the next few days or a week, it will get stockier and it will start to take off. Now that basket's a little short. This is one of the smaller baskets that they sell. And I do think I've got a bigger one. I'm going to run and take a look in a second. But as you can see, this plant needs a good watering, and I'm making sure I'm watering the flower pot that I put in there as well. And I'm going to put some mulch around the plant, not up against the trunk or the base of the plant. That I'm just going to leave alone, but just a few inches away, and then I'm going to put that on top to keep the dampness in there so it won't dry out. We're not raining right now. We're probably about 68 during the day, but we've got a storm coming in the next few days. So things will change then. Who knows? The whole plant could disappear. But I did have a bigger one, and this I used for another plant about a year ago, where I put a pie pan on the top. I made some holes, and I zip tied it on. That gave the plant shade. This works perfect when the weather is getting warm, so you can protect the plant from the hot sun. But, you know, this is what I've got, and it's ready to use. So I'm just going to use this basket because it's a little taller. This is more to support that poor zucchini plant up a little bit, and also keep any critters away from it right now, and give it a fighting chance to take off before the big storm comes in. And we'll see how it does. If it doesn't work out, well, it's compost and we start all over again. That should work out really good. The stakes, I don't need to leave them in there, but I'm going to do it for right now. But you get the idea of how to set it up. And then I had this stick with a little bird on it, and I stuck it into the basket. So if a wind gust comes, it's not going to blow away, and that will hold it in place. You can use a skewer or whatever you want to hold everything. Now, let me show you what else I'm going to do. So I'm going to come out here and finish this up. Now, what I'm going to do with these is I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to put the holes right on the bottom. Boy, I really don't like doing that, because in Southern California, we get so dry and my deck gets so hot from the sun. You know what? I think I'm not going to. If you're in an area where you're getting a lot of rain, you can put the holes right on the bottom, and you could put a container underneath and catch the water. My issue is, if I put the holes on the bottom, even though it's plastic, unlike a grow bag that dries out real fast, this will retain water for the plants, and they do fantastic. You've seen it every year on my deck. But the issue is, it still drains everything out. Gravity's pulling it down. It will go out. And not only do I lose the valuable water, it will dry out quicker. But if I leave about an inch or more, then my plants will always have the water. I think I'm going to go ahead. I'm not going to worry about catching the water, and I'm going to go ahead and put the holes up and get some good holes, because we always want good drainage. But I'm going to let this container retain water. I want to plant in here, I'm not sure, maybe a tomato or something like that, even though it gets quite big. I could trim it. But let's get good drainage in it. And let's go ahead and let's retain about 1.5 inches of water. We put that back there. So it's going to catch the water from the top. And same thing here. We'll go ahead and put the holes up, so no matter what's in there, it will always have water. Again, make your holes fairly big, so you want to make sure it doesn't block up. If it does, you can always just take some out and replace it. No big deal. But you know, we take the soil out to the holes on this side, and then you would put something bulky in there, like leaves and different things, and put it back. But this will be good. All right, so let's come back in about a week or so and see what happens. I'm a little worried because we've got a big storm coming in, and they're calling it bad. They're saying wind and everything. That's all I have to do is have this thing blow away. I can protect it from the cold because now I can wrap my stakes. That's why I put that in there, and be able to protect it that way. But if we have a big windstorm come in here and they're talking big winds, here's one good thing. If I want to, I can lift this whole thing up. It's easy, it's in a dishpan, and bring it in the house and sit it on some plastic on the floor. Once the storm is over, just bring it back outside. I can pull the stakes out. I don't need it. We'll work it out. This thing is portable. I take care of it the way I want. If it was in the ground, I'd lose it if a big storm came in and blew it down. So being small sometimes is better. Have a great day, and don't forget to eat what you grow. Bye-bye. You know, I thought spring was here. I was jumping for joy. All right, well, it's coming. So this morning, it looked great. I actually uncovered it, and I see that it's trying to throw tiny flowers. I didn't see that yesterday, but see how it's catching the water? It is working. So it is going to be, it just didn't quite drip through here. Oh yeah, it did. So that's going to be perfect. So if I put a tomato plant on each side, it doesn't matter what I want to put on in there. I could put parsley or celery even. It's going to get fed by that container, this dishpan, all that great compost tea going into both of those. It's a win-win altogether. But you know what I'm going to do real quick is I'm going to wrap it in some tulle, And that will give it a little bit of shade. And then later on, if I decide when the storm, this is the calm before the storm comes in, I'll see if I want to lift this whole thing. I can even bring the PVC stand in. But I hope we can save this plant and have our first zucchini on the deck fairly soon. Isn't that cool? I love these dish pans. These are like really close to being my favorite next to the totes. Okay, it's kind of neck and neck. And one last thing, with those irrigation tubings holding up those tomato stakes, you can throw a cover on top if you feel the sun is just too much for your tender, loving little plant. Oh, and Zoe was there to supervise.